Hey guys, we are with the podcast team for this magazine called Inquiry. This is our first podcast. My name is Casey.
I'm Bella.
I'm Sam.
And today we are going to be going over this research paper written by a student in our class. Her name is Arisel, and she wrote a research paper titled Abuse the New Fantasy. So
Basically, just the gist of the essay overall, it was about how novels are romanticizing abuse, and it's kind of, the way I saw it kind of subtle. I didn't really realize it until like she kind of called it out, that these books that we've read, I'm sure a lot of people have read Twilight, is one of the books she mentioned. It actually shows signs of like Edward being very toxic to the relationship, which I didn't really see it as that. And then she also talks about how like the side of people, how the reasons why some people didn't see it, because it's like shown as protective behavior, but that it's really strays into the more abusive.
okay, yeah, well, I've never read Twilight, but I know that when I think I was in elementary at the time, because yeah, my friends were obsessed with Twilight and the movies. So distracting. Hey, we're back. I'm sorry we had to pause it for a bit. That's kind of an awkward pause. There was some technical difficulties that came up. Anyway, I was in the middle of talking about this really heavy topic, and yeah, when I was in elementary, my friends were obsessed with Twilight, and after reading some of the analysis and the sources that she used in her paper, I was like, snap, I can't believe some like 11-year-olds or like 10-year-olds were reading a book that includes so much abuse, and we're like, I want a vampire boyfriend. I was like, what? Like, you know, did you ever want a vampire boyfriend or something? Like, I never thought of that. I think it's weird. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't know the concept of it, because she describes it in her research paper that, I think it was one of the sources that stated it, or it could have been her, that it was kind of just like the idealization of becoming a vampire that made the character Bella obsessed with Edward. And I was like, that's kind of strange. Like, despite his attitude of being like a stalker and, and stuff, she's still like, I want to be like him and I want to be with him. Like,
Yeah,
you know, it's really
it's
weird.
like a, I don't know, I guess because also it is very weird to kind of depict that, and then like not even just a book, like it goes into like a movie, which if you're like me, you prefer the movie over the book. Some people are different, but it's kind of like these kids, like you were saying, like middle schoolers, when that's like your developing age and like you start developing the crushes and stuff, they're getting these ideas of like, oh, I want a guy that's like this, like very like overbearing, very like there when I don't even want him there. And it's kind of like teaching kids that that's what it is. So in a way, I do understand how it's romanticizing abuse, because like these little girls or boys are just like, yeah, they're wanting this weird relationship that's very like, what's the word, like dominating.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's like it's really not good for these kids to get these ideas.
Yeah, and going back to like how it depicts like romanticizing abuse, like in the movies, I saw them all. Like I didn't really see it that way until I started reading it. Like all the points she would put on how it would introduce it, like romanticizing and everything. And some of the points, let me go back to my essay. Like when they would fight for her, like I'm guessing most of the time she would be in pain or something all the time.
Yeah. And I think that kind of ties into the fact that the reason like we don't see it as like, oh, he's abusing her like verbally or like mentally, it's because like it's become so normal. Like it's become so normal to see that it's just like, oh, that's just a normal relationship now. And then like, I don't know, it's not like a good mentality. Like now that you're catching on to it from this essay, it's like, oh, you're right, like a lot of things aren't supposed to be like that.
Yeah, and she brings up different types of romance. There's two that she mentions. One is fairy tale romance, and the other is dark romance. So the fairy tale one, like, I get it, you know, like, oh, Prince Charming, he's so attractive. Like, she uses sentences and phrases from the book. I didn't take note of that. But to describe, like, Edward in this kind of magical way, like, oh, he's glistening and stuff like that. And it's like, I could see how that makes sense. Like, and it's what she calls the honeymoon phase, which I know a lot of people realize that's a common term used for relationships when they're going great, like, oh, the honeymoon phase. But then she goes into the idea that once within that mentality of like a fairy tale romance, the second that these people start demonstrating abusive behavior, they kind of put it off as like, oh, that's not the real them, because I know that the real them is a Prince Charming or something, you know?
Yeah. Like the vampire side, like how it's like the different side of them kind of thing. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like there's this game I played called Mystic Messenger, and within it there's a story between two characters, Bee and Rika. And it's funny because when I first read it, I was like, this is such a cute story. Like, they're there for each other no matter what. He's her son and she's like struggling. But then I was like, I wonder what people who read this book, like, not this book, this game thought. And when I went, they're like, I hate Rika so much. Both of them are toxic for each other. And I was like, what happened? I went back and I realized, why did I think this was cute? In parts of the story, he says, like, you can tear me apart limb from limb, blind me, like, cripple me, I will still stay by your side. And then she blinds him and he dies because someone shoots him and he didn't see them aiming the bullet at him. And that's when she like kind of turns back to normal. But I was like, snap. And even in the end, they still tried putting it off as a beautiful relationship with the ending song of the game saying, what was it? It says, all those things that you said to hurt me again, I know that's not who you really are. I was like, snap. And then after reading this research paper and seeing the fairy tale romance part, I was like, that's just like the way it's portrayed in this game.
It's a very common portrayal, like the, oh, they didn't mean it, and it's like, it's a very, I don't know, it's not that good to get that idea stuck in our head.
To influence it.
Yeah, it's very influential.
Yeah, and I was like, the game's rating is like, I think 15 plus, but I played this game when I was 16 and I still didn't know what was like wrong. I was kind of blinded to like what is right and wrong in like a book or like the way they portray things, and I was like, snap, this visual novel says different like things that I thought was okay, like, and now I realize it's not okay. But anyway, yeah, and about the dark romance part, where violence is typical, have you guys seen something like that in like books or like movies or anything?
Not really. I think just like how she brought up the book that's gonna be a movie after whatever.
Yeah.
She brought that up, and I'd seen like the commercials, or that's because like, I mean, it's not out yet, but I'd seen the commercials and I'm like, well, I mean, he does not seem like a good guy, like, at all. And I feel like darker romance is easier to pick up on, but then it's like overpowered with like, but oh, he loves me, like, I could be the person that saves him, like, he needs my help, or like, I don't know, it makes you see things in a different light, because like I saw it before reading this essay. I saw the commercial, and then after reading the essay I thought about the commercial because she mentioned the book, and there's like a lot of places in the commercial where you see that he's like a violent person, and he looks very violent, and he's, the way he says things like, oh, I'm like, I'll hurt you and stuff, but that he loves her anyways. It's like kind of cancels each other out in a way.
I think most books like about romance, I'm pretty sure all of them influence like abusive relation in there.
I think so too.
Like
'Cause,
subtly
yeah,
sometimes.
Like,
they should like, well, she does bring up like a lot of good points, like on how they influence abusive relationship. Like for kids, they should like sort of limit the age limit in some books, like read them and like rate them, like all this like influence is way too much, like it's has too much abusiveness, like it has too much violence in there, because there's some, like how you said, like they're available like 4th, 5th grade, like and that's when the kids are like developing their minds and everything like that.
I think if like yeah, you can, like, it's part of a fantasy, like they're interesting to read. Like murder mysteries doesn't mean like you're gonna become a murderer, but I think they shouldn't be available to kids at a certain age, because they're developing, they're getting these ideas in their head, and in the long run it could be bad, versus like if you make it available only to like adults, they're already like developed, they know what they want, they're just like, oh, this is just like an interesting story,
they know what's right from wrong.
And in her research she goes over the whole After series, which started off as a One Direction fan fiction. I was like, okay. But then like she substituted the One Direction members' names with other things. And when I was looking at it, I was like, this kind of story is like kind of cliche. Like, to me it's cliche because I play this one app called Episode, where there's a lot of stories written by people that are original, but there's this one story that showed up called In My Bed, which was about the exact same thing that this series was about, like someone sleeping with someone else because they're a virgin. And I was like, these stories typically get banned on this platform, but I guess Wattpad and stuff is like very open to a lot of writers, and that's where her story started, and I guess it gained like fame and stuff because of all the reads. And that's kind of a dangerous thing when you put it like out there on the internet, because I mean, with the book sale or like even libraries, they at least ban some books from children. But this is a story on Wattpad where a child could just go on there and read it and like be like, wow, I want this, you know?
They end up fantasizing over it, and it can affect the kid in the long run. So
and this was something developed over years. She said that the girl first started writing it in 2013, and then now it's a movie in 2019. Like, I'm like, I've seen bits of the trailer, and I was like, that's very kind of explicit, and I only saw the first 5 seconds, but I never stayed to watch the rest because I was like, this is pretty boring, you know?
Yeah, no, like how you were saying, it's very explicit. I was watching, when I first saw the commercial, it showed something very like suggestive, I guess you could say, and I thought, wow, this must be like a rated R movie, like kids shouldn't be watching this. It gave me the same vibes as like a 50 Shades of Grey commercial. And like my sister brought it up to me. She's like, yo, you're gonna go take me to see that movie, and I'm like, are you sure, like you're even allowed in? And it's like PG-13, like 13-year-old, you have to, like, that's the age you have to be to go see this. And that's also like the, like, I want to say like middle school, like 8th grade, and you're still developing at that age. Like that's like the crush developments, and I don't know, it could be very bad for, I don't think it should have been rated 13. Like how you were saying, it's very accessible to kids. Like it's still very accessible, and this is like imagery, not just like a book. Yeah.
It's like more open and more available to everyone, and it's being promoted. Like it's like, that's the thing. It's like, it's one thing if it was made and people are like, oh, that's really bad, but no, this is something that everyone's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see it and stuff like that. It's like the new romance movie of the year. Like, anyway, she just basically summarizes this with the idea that abuse really is being integrated into places like this, specifically with this new series that's been made into, not new series, but like new movie coming out that's being hyped up, and it's not ideal and not okay. Like,